Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. And I know all of you may be thinking, is this going to be another interview podcast? No, we're going to talk about an actual topic today, which will be the Olympics and how every team's doing, as we're a couple days in, some good, some bad, some surprising, honestly, in this kind of whole term in the first couple of days. Don't worry, those interviews will still keep coming with some guests and some fun people around. But of course, as I promised at the start when I started my YouTube, every Friday is going to be a different topic. And it still has kind of went that way, I guess, but just in a little bit of a different kind of path. But yeah, we're going to go over the Olympics today, everything from scores to standings to guys leading to maybe disappointing. We're going to get right into that. But if you have not already, make sure you go like, subscribe, ring that bell, comment. I want to hear what all of you have to say, especially about who your picks might be. I've seen a lot of the criticism on the videos, and I mean, look, I'm here to make some predictions, not always make people happy in what they are, but I understand some of the conflicts with some of the nations there. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. And yeah, look, we are a couple days into the Olympics right now, and we've had some scores that I think surprised us to start, but also made sense. Like the first one here, Slovakia versus Finland. I don't think anyone was expecting a Slovakia win. I think, yeah, they could have kind of battled it out and gotten that win, and that's exactly what they did. But most people were expecting Finland to take this one and be one of the top teams in their group. However, that's not how it's went in Group B so far. Slovakia wins 4-1 in that one. Juraj Slafkovský, he scores 2 goals. The goaltending was absolutely terrific for Slovakia. In the second game, Sweden versus Italy, closer than expected. The third period's really when things kind of got away. I mean, you talk about Italy being tied twice at one point, scoring the first goal. Pretty much this game coming down to the last, 4-5 minutes in those empty nets. Yeah, it hasn't been... I personally don't think it's been the most ideal start, because now we'll kind of skip down to Finland versus Sweden, which just happened today. Of course, right now getting underway is the Czechia-France game, and I don't know if this will switch throughout the video. I hope it does, because technically this isn't live. But, you know, with Finland-Sweden, another interesting game. One, Filip Gustavsson in both of his starts, whether it was versus Italy or Finland, got off to a very, very slow start. At one point, 2 goals on 4 shots against Italy, of all teams. But after that, the second, third period, great finish for him. Very stable, very calm, very poised. But I'm wondering why this is happening. Why there is a reason for this, for a goaltender to just be so hot and cold. Now, this is his first Olympics, right? Filip Gustavsson is not a Stanley Cup winner, right? He's still relatively young as a goaltender, but has established himself in that way, right? Like, he's been good this year for the Minnesota Wild. He's been pretty much good for the most part throughout his whole Minnesota Wild tenure. But in these games, very shaky. And it's not like Sweden has played terrible in front of him. I think that the first game against Italy was definitely very meh, and again, kind of gotten better as the game went on. I think they played much better compared to the score that was. It was a 4-1 game, 3-1 if you're not going to count the empty net. I think that they played better as a team. But again, Filip Gustavsson, towards the end of the game, made bigger saves when he needed to, but at the start just wasn't there. And when we go to the start, you know, Nicholas Matenpalo, he scored. Not a big goal scorer, obviously, is more of a defensive defenseman in that way, but, you know, very different for a Finnish team that I think you're expecting something different. You know, Mikko Rantanen, he got a goal. Hasn't been too crazy. I think he's been fine so far in this tournament. And of course, you know, Mikael Granlund, who's been a big part in this. Rube Hintz has also done well. You know, Anton Lundell, he's always going to be a big one there in his faceoffs and defensive capabilities. But, you know, the one guy I would like to shout out is Juuse Saros. You know, in the first game against Slovakia, he was getting, like, he wasn't getting peppered in that way. Finland was actually, in some cases, leading the game. Overall, Slovakia took over that game. But Juuse Saros wasn't so stable. Like, he was fine. But in this game, competed very well. Saves 34 of 35 shots in this win against their biggest rival in this tournament. And if not, then arguably their biggest rival. Yeah, that's a good win for a Finland team that kind of needed that, to be honest. And yeah, and then we look at the other games. a lot of them made sense. The Swiss get a win over France 4-0. I was expecting maybe a couple of more goals, but yeah, not bad by them. Czechia blanked by Canada. And look, I think we were, again, a game that we were all expecting Canada to win. You know, Connor McDavid, 3 apples, and he kind of looked a little nervous at times, and I say that by bobbling the puck, but he was still so good. Don't take that. Just take that very lightly. That was more of just like a small kind of thought, you know. But Jordan Binnington saves everything. Shutout for him. And I think I was just expecting more of a pushback from Czechia. I think their first period was actually very, very good. You know, they give up that late goal, which I've seen this in a couple of games throughout. And what I will say here is that for Czechia, and you know, they're up 1-0 right now against France, and that's live right now, as I mentioned before. But yeah, they can stay in games. Their goaltending will do that for them. Lucas Dostal, Karel Vejmelka. I believe Vejmelka is actually starting today, unless I'm, you know, totally out of my mind here. But yeah, like, for this specifically, I was expecting more of a pushback, but Canada just took over as this game went on. The second and third period was theirs. It wasn't even close. And you know, when we look at even just the box score off face value, you know, it was, you kind of knew, I guess, after that late first period goal from Macklin Celebrini. Shout out to him, because crazy scoring the first goal of the Olympics for Canada in such a long time, and you're the youngest player, or one of the youngest players, I should say. I believe Albert Smits of Latvia is the youngest player. But when it comes to something like this, so crazy. The shot's 36-26 in this whole game, and even in the third period, 13-4, 12-11. But yeah, that first probably the closest, and even in shots, if you want to say it that way, the closest. But yeah, like, Canada just so calm in this way, so calm. And yeah, when we look at who contributed, Macklin Celebrini had a goal, Cale Makar an assist. I believe it was actually on that Celebrini goal. McDavid, 3 apples, Suzuki, McKinnon. And you know what I will say is, before we move on from Canada here and talk about everybody else a little bit more, Thomas Harley and Drew Doughty played pretty well, in my opinion. You know, Harley had 2 apples, and I'm not even going to talk about the points here, because I think as a whole, you know, Josh Morrissey, and we still haven't really gotten an update from him. Again, I'm not expecting him to play today against the Swiss. I don't think he actually even is. But they both played very well in his absence. No one was really expecting them to get a ton of minutes to start here, depending on how things were going to shake out. But they did what they needed to do, and they did it well. And I think that's extremely nice to see from the Canada front office, from John Cooper and everyone else, and even the fans, because a lot of people were ripping on Drew Doughty, and even Thomas Harley, because he has not had that great of a season. Altogether, it has been very shaky. You know, he's had to deal with some of his problems, but compared to last year, which, I mean, is kind of hard because it was such a good year last year for him, you know, it doesn't look good. But he looked very stable in this, looked very calm. Same as Drew Doughty. Like, this guy, when those 5 rings show up at the Olympics, he is there. You know, we saw him do it in his first year in 2010 with Canada. Looked great. Started as a 7th defenseman. Ended up being a big role. Actually being on the ice for the game-winning goal, the gold medal goal. And then, yeah, I mean, Thomas Harley, like, I'm not saying he's going to be that guy. Obviously not. That's kind of like, I mean, you could kind of say it's Celebrini being that guy now. But yeah, I mean, I think they both played very well. And I think that's really nice to see from Canada. USA winning 5-1 against Latvia. Latvia got bailed out a lot in this game. I mean, a lot. And you know what? Hats off to them. You don't challenge it, you're not going to get that call to sway to you. So, I mean, in a 5-1 game where it probably should have been more, I think that they battled really well. When those calls went for them, I thought that they carried that momentum. You know, we saw that when it was almost 2-0, the goal got taken back, it was offside, they go right back and they score, right? It looked really good. That almost actually happened on the other one that was called back in the goaltender interference. They almost were to get another one. I think it was almost a 2-1 game. It was blocked in front. I can't remember who had it, but yeah, Latvia is always going to have a lot of pushback. And we saw that in the first period. Shots were 15-9, and they kept kind of getting worse here. The second was the worst, and shots were 17-2, total 38-18. Latvia was never going to win this game. I think at the start you definitely had that feeling of maybe they could do it, but things just kind of took over. I mean, so much talent on this team. Jack Eichel and Matthew Tkachuk double up in assists, as well as Quinn Hughes, who's just so dynamic. Matthews gets a goal here. Brady Tkachuk opens it up off a primary, not a secondary, a primary assist from his brother. How cool is that? And then, Tage Thompson, he buries one. Brock Nelson. His shot is so deceptive. I think he had, 23 goals in 31 games prior to the Olympic break. And during that time, the only person who had more goals than him was a ding, 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 Connor McDavid, who was on that crazy tear. But yeah, he looked good. Jack Hughes. I think that I really do like, even in 11 minutes and 14 seconds, I loved that he was kind of able to just ease his way in. And I don't think he's going to get a lot of practice time. I still think he's playing hurt, similar to a guy in William Nylander. But yeah, Jack Hughes really did impress me in the way in that, he can still be dynamic when he's hurt like that. He can still kind of do what he needs to do. And again, I mean, you love to see it. And then Connor Hellebuck, 17 of 18, 944. Exactly what you would hope to expect. It wasn't really a crazy game for him. I think the worst period he had was, I guess you could say the third, because it wasn't as much of a push from USA. But yeah, altogether, good win for USA. This was a good game by them. Germany, Denmark. You have Stützle scored twice and Leon Draisaitl score again. That was a close game for Denmark. And I will say, again, shout out Philip Grubauer in this one, who saved, what was it in this game? Yeah, who saves 37 of 38. Look, I said he was going to be an X factor so much because, yeah, you can also say that in the two names that scored here, in Stützle and Draisaitl, and if you want to throw in Moritz Seider because he's going to be an anchor on that back end, those guys were going to carry them. No doubt, I'm not going to dispute any of that. But the biggest part in this game and in hockey, goaltending. If you get good goaltending, you can win games that you probably shouldn't win. And in this case, I think you could say that for Germany. I think Denmark played very, very well against them. And yeah, you know what? You lose in this one. I don't think that they should kind of put their heads down. I thought that was a very good effort. But yeah, Leon Draisaitl, he has 2 points in this one. Stützle 2 points, and everyone else kind of chipping in here with the other names that I guess we don't really talk about too much because of the bigger guys, and JJ Peterka, and even Lucas Reichel, who's been pretty good. Since kind of making his way out, if you want to say it that way, of the NHL, or maybe kind of playing a little bit. It's been a weird time for him, but he's been fine, I guess. But yeah, Grubauer, 37 of 38, easily won a shutout there. And yeah, I think I like Denmark for a third place spot. Again, we'll see that with Latvia. I know a lot of people were kind of saying, Latvia is better than what they are, and I think we saw that in the first and a little bit of the half of the second there. But it shows that the depth is so kind of crucial for a lot of these teams, and that even just top star talent is going to lead you at some points. Slovakia as well. Juraj Slafkovsky, he scores 2. He has 4 points now, a goal and an assist in this game against Italy. He's been really good. Wasn't a goal and assist, actually. But he... I didn't put him as an X factor, and I think a lot of people were kind of surprised about that. And, an assist there. So, I think a lot of people were surprised about that. But for Juraj Slafkovsky, I think one thing to keep in mind, Slovakia doesn't have a ton of expectations at this tournament. If they're going to do well, guys are going to have to chip in. I think we saw that. Slafkovsky is leading. He's a first overall pick. He has that kind of, aura to him, if you want to say that. But the goaltending right here in these two, so crucial for Slovakia. We talked about it with Grubauer, how it's important that you get that goaltending. They can steal you games. I don't know if you could say that they stole this game against Italy. I think this was just a very meh effort by Slovakia. But they still got it done. I think the goaltending was the real steal in their first game against Finland. But, I mean, again, potato. It is what it is. But, yeah, I didn't mind that at all. And then, yeah, I mean, now we have the Czechia game. Martin Necas scoring against France. That game's still ongoing right now, but let's move on to the standings as we see them. Now, what's so critical about these standings right now is the goal differential, and I think a lot of people have talked about this and why it matters so much, and why it's put kind of Czechia in a pretty bad spot in that first game. Because again, people were not expecting Canada to just roll over them 5-0. I think that was a very all-around good effort by Canada, but now Czechia has to battle back. In this game against France, so critical for them goal-scoring wise that they just absolutely plaster them, because no one's expecting France to, go out and win a, playoff qualification game, win a game in the group stage, and do more than that. So if Czechia can kind of keep that going, then yeah, you could see that, as I projected, a second place finish. But the Swiss, I mean, depending on how they play against Canada today, could have that in the pocket. I mean, depending on how many goals that they score, I'm not expecting them to win today, but they definitely could. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, the goal differential is going to be so critical. And that's why when I look to Group B of why it's so important. Slovakia, they get a win against Italy. Their goal differential is now 7-3. Finland and Sweden have both played 2 games now. Now, Finland gets a win. Sweden already had a win. But their goal differential, even. 5-5 for Finland, 6-6 for Sweden. It is going to be so critical in these last games here, especially, for Sweden, it's actually a little bit harder. They haven't went up against Slovakia yet, who's looked pretty good. I mean, again, I didn't really like their game against Italy, but I think Italy's played pretty well. All things considered, I think Matthew Bradley has done a very good job. Thomas Larkin leading on that defense core. I think I've really liked how they've looked all together. I think even Clara in net has looked spectacular, all things considered. He had to leave that one game, kind of came in today because Fandani, who's also looked good, had to leave, right? It's a whole kind of thing. But I think altogether that team has looked really good. I've loved how they looked. I think considering all expectations, a goal differential of 4 to against of 8 is not too shabby at all, considering the group. Now, again, they haven't faced Sweden yet, who I think that's going to be an absolutely critical game for them. They need to dismantle Italy to put them in a better spot in this tournament. But, it's so critical about one winning the group, because that gives you a bye, and then being the second best team of all 3 groups, that's also the biggest thing. So altogether, that's going to be an interesting group to follow. And then Group C, of course, USA leads it. Their goal differential 5-1 in that game against Latvia, Germany, Denmark, Latvia. I said Latvia second, and actually how it's looking right now is how I predicted it, which was USA, Germany, Denmark, Latvia. We're only 1 game in for each of those teams, but I'm excited for that Denmark-Latvia game, because I want to know if I'm going to be proved wrong or right. If you didn't know, a lot of Latvian fans not happy with my predictions of them coming last. Fair enough. I mean, I don't like to underrate Latvia, because I know they always work so hard, and I think that we saw that through about half of the game against USA before USA just kind of took over. Now, they weren't expecting to win that game, but you saw that fight of when they get saves and when they get things kind of going their way. It's the momentum. The longer that they kind of hang into the game, the more dangerous that they are. So for Latvia, they will be a team to watch out for, a team to follow. Again, Denmark, not too much expectation. I'm saying that they win that game against Latvia, but I could also see that game go to overtime. I could also see that game be won by Latvia. Germany only beat them 3-1, and Denmark, you could say, outplayed Germany for the most part. It's just their stars capitalized on their chances for Germany when they had them. So I think altogether, that's one thing to also kind of keep in mind for how these games may go. When it comes to the stat leaders so far, I think Rasmus Dahlin has been a pretty nice piece, even in Sweden's kind of maybe disappointing start. I think even if you get the win against Italy, 5-2 isn't exactly, amazing. I kind of talked, I think I actually messed up a couple minutes ago just talking about how that game is going to be so critical for them against Italy. Finland playing them. But, when when Finland gets Italy, that's so big for them to get. I should say Sweden against Slovakia. I think I was already saying that, but just in case. But yeah, Dahlin's been good. We talked about Slavkovsky, 4 points, 2 goals, 2 apples. Dalibor Dvorsky, I haven't talked about too much. A young kid, he scores that 1 goal, the tip deflection in. He looks so comfortable so far for Slovakia, and that's exactly what you're hoping for. Is they don't have a ton of this top end talent. I think arguably even Yuri Slavkovsky is just a top 6 guy, which is not bad at all. You take what you can get, but with the Canadas, the Finlands, the Swedens, the USAs, the Czechias, who have this top-end talent like the Matthews or the Pasternaks, the Crosbys, McKinnons, all of these names, the Nylanders, the Rantanens, you need this type of depth to step in. And I think that right now, not bad for a guy in Dalibor Dvorsky. Dustin Gasly, Italy is always going to be needing points. He's up there in points right now, in top points for the Olympics. Kind of crazy, again, for Italy. Connor McDavid, he already has 3 apples in his first game. That's how she goes. Timo Meyer, 2 goals. He's going to be one to watch for in the Team Canada matchup today. Brock Nelson, we already talked about how, deceptive his shot is and how good he is. Stützle, Matt Bradley, he's been good. Even J.J. Moser, Joel Armia, and he's actually getting some power play time too, which you never saw that when he was in Montreal, even in L.A. as well. But yeah, a lot of these names kind of expecting, and I will say though, I do think William Nylander, and this isn't really much of a, it's a guess, but I think we all kind of know, Nylander is probably playing hurt. He's not practicing. It's the same as Jack Hughes. They've looked fine. I think that they've looked good. Or actually, no, obviously they've looked good so far, but not overly impactful altogether. But yeah, I think if there's definitely a lot of names in here, and I think people kind of said that before this tournament started. There are a lot of names in this tournament, whether that means NHL or not, that are playing hurt. They're playing hurt, and we're going to see some announcements at the end of this to say, yeah, probably this guy is probably out for like a couple weeks. He's out for a month. You're going to see a lot of that. And I don't like to hear that or say that, but it's probably what's going to happen, which is disappointing. But, look, the players fought for this. I'm happy it's back. Fans are happy it's back. Everyone's happy it's back. Competing for your country on the national stage. But, yeah, it's just keep an eye on that. In terms of the goaltending, again, been very interesting. Leonardo Giannoni, I don't think he starts today. I think you get Akira Schmid because you don't really want to risk this injury that we were just talking about again. But he looked really good in the game against France. Jordan Binnington, he gets that shutout. And, Samuel Halave, I don't know if I'm saying that right. I've heard it said different ways, so I hope I'm saying that right. But he was so good in his one game. But yeah, everyone else, I think, for the most part, everyone's been playing how they have. Now, Philip Gustafsson, we talked about him earlier. Again, starting bad and then finishing well. UC Soros, definitely a better game from him today compared to his first one. And then everyone else, Lucas Dostal, I wouldn't say got shelled against, he kind of did, but, they didn't really do him much favors. Elvis Merzlikins, I didn't think looked terrible, honestly, against USA, but I think that's, again, up for debate. Frederick Anderson, it's fine. I wasn't really expecting much from him. But yeah, I think altogether, and even the Italian goalies right here, look at those numbers. Not too shabby, considering both have had to come in twice. So they've done a pretty good job. Now, when it comes to my predictions right now, a lot of you have not been liking them, and yeah, I respect the gift there. I may not be looking like I know puck right now, but it may not go this way considering how well Slovakia is doing so far. So a lot of these numbers may be different. I think right now, you can still kind of put Canada and USA up there. After that, I think it's kind of a toss-up of who may win a group. You never know what's going to happen in these last couple of games. I think you could probably safely put Finland right now. I don't say Sweden because they might be that second spot, and depending on how well someone else does in their group in second, then they might just have to play in that first play-in. But, right now, my Philip Gustafsson pick and best goalie, not looking too great. I don't think Miro Heiskanen is a bad pick so far. I mean, Connor McDavid already has 3 apples, so we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, I mean, all-star team prediction of McKinnon, McDavid, Nylander. We'll see. Yossi, Heiskanen, Gustafsson. It is what it is. We'll see how this one goes. Still so early to predict and see, but that's why we do them, because they're fun. And then in terms of the medal odds, I did this before a lot of them yesterday. It was actually after the Slovakia win. Now, I'm still going to stay on this. I think Czechia is better than what they showed in their first game. Finland too. A lot of people saying example, this one comment: Finland has to be lower than Slovakia, Switzerland, and Germany. I don't think that they do. I mean, we saw that here today. They beat Sweden in a pretty nice win. We have to remember, Finland is a top country in terms of hockey. And yeah, you know what? They can have those bad games, and they did against a team like Slovakia, who I think really dominated the play for the most part. But you have to remember, after one game, that's not how teams can look. Now, Sweden has played 2 games. They haven't looked great, but, you have to take in every game, like every game. So I think altogether, just let it kind of slide. Let it go through these rounds and how it's going to look. I'm excited to see how it'll go. But yeah, I really like Switzerland. I will see how they do against Canada today. I think that's going to be a big step for them. Germany too. Sweden. I mean, they're up there. I have them up there, and they're not doing too great. But again, big hockey country, lots of talent. And then Slovakia, I have them at 12%. Now, this is medals altogether, and it's different from when they last competed in 2022, but I don't mind this at all for Slovakia like that. And then Denmark at 2%, Latvia at 1%, and France and Italy. I think all of those are very fair, not really much to debate. If they end up going that far, I mean, crazy how they'd get that far, and I'd love to see something like that. I don't think it happens, but yeah, so that was the last thing I wanted to talk about the medal odds. Again, this was just a really fun one to break down what's happened so far and what can be going on. But if you have not already, make sure you go like, subscribe, ring that bell, comment. I want to hear what all of you have to say about the Olympics so far and how it's so nice to see this type of hockey back. But of course, until next time, my name is Zach Staden, and